NFL received the video in April. Law enforcement officials say he sent a video of the Ray Rice elevator incident to an NFL executive 5 months ago. The law enforcement official played a voicemail from an NFL office number on April 9th, confirming the video had arrived. A female voice expressed thanks and says, quote, "You're right, it's terrible." The law enforcement official can't confirm anyone watched the video and has had no further communication with any NFL employee. The NFL released the following statement, quote, "We have no knowledge of this. We are not aware of anyone in our office who possessed or saw the video before it was made public on Monday. We will look into it." Looking into it for them refers to an independent investigation. We will talk about that in a few moments. But first, Stephen A., your reaction to this AP report?
Well, number one, my initial reaction was that of somebody being stunned because if AP is reporting that a law enforcement official indeed said that he sent the video to the NFL office, has a number inside the NFL office, has a voicemail with a female voice on it saying, "Yes, we got it. I saw it. It's terrible," or something along those lines, because I don't have the exact quote directly in front of me. If indeed there's truth to that, then it's going to be pretty hard for Roger Goodell in the league office to convince anybody that if the video made it to the league office, that Roger Goodell somehow did not see that back in April. So to me, if indeed this report ends up being true, as I said yesterday, I prefaced every single comment that I made about my support of Roger Goodell keeping his job by saying, absent of evidence that the video is something that Roger Goodell did not see, absent of evidence that he saw the video and just ignored it and tried to sweep it under the rug, Roger Goodell deserved to keep his job. But if we find out that indeed he saw the video or had access to the video and decided to ignore it and try to sweep it under the rug, then obviously, in my estimation, that's a fireable offense, and Roger Goodell has to go. But I would like to acknowledge that I still find it difficult to believe that he's seen this tape, Skip Bayless, and I'll tell you one of the biggest reasons why. Because Roger Goodell, at the time that he instituted the 6-game ban for a first-time offender and a lifetime ban for a second offense, Roger Goodell also went on record by acknowledging in his letters to the owners, knowing that that letter would be public, "I got it wrong." That's what he acknowledged. That's what he admitted. So if he had seen the video, it would have been very, very easy for him at that particular juncture to say, "I've seen the video. I have this new evidence. I got it wrong. Ray Rice has to go. And oh, by the way, here's the policy." But he never did that. So I find it very difficult to believe that the commissioner of the NFL, who's got a pretty good reputation, would all of a sudden shove the video aside, ignore it, try to sweep it under the rug, yet come back and acknowledge that he made a mistake with the initial 2-game ruling. He could have simply said then, "I've got the video. I've seen it. I realize now I was wrong. This man has to go." And the fact that he didn't do that at that particular juncture still leads me to believe that he may not have seen the video. But indeed, according to this AP report, if indeed it is true that a law enforcement official sent that video to the NFL office and it was in possession of the NFL office, Roger Goodell is not going to be able to convince anybody that he did not see that video. And if indeed he did see that video, or really legitimately and intentionally decided to avoid looking at it and let Ray Rice off the hook, and that can be proven under those conditions and those conditions only, Roger Goodell would have to go as commissioner of the National Football League.
You make some fair points, but I don't agree with your ultimate conclusion that you draw. Now, before I get to my conclusion, let me make a fair point here. By all accounts, Roger Goodell, over his 8-year tenure, has done a phenomenal job for the league. Let's be clear about this. The owners of this league uniformly like and respect the commissioner they chose to hire. And that, as you well know, is no small task on the part of the commissioner. They are unified around him because this league is enjoying unprecedented prosperity over the last few years. They just make more and more and more money. So obviously they're going to like their CEO, their commissioner. But all that said, trying to be fair, I believe this AP report will be and should be the last straw for Roger Goodell. I believe he will and should lose his job over this. And just to be clear, we've both been in this business a long time, the Associated Press is a highly respected news gathering organization. And as you point out, they went so far as to have the proof and validation of a voicemail that featured not just a league voice, the voice of a female who said, according to the AP, we have it, and this is terrible. Well, yeah, we all agree. It's really, really terrible. So now, we're back to your position versus my position. Your position from the start. If Roger Goodell acquired a tape and saw the tape, he should be fired. I'm going to say what I've said for the last 3 days, and forgive me for repeating myself. But my position is Roger Goodell never wanted to see the tape. If he was informed that they had acquired the tape, it's like, just leave me alone. I told you starting Monday, I don't believe he dropped the ball. I believe he chose not to pick the ball up. When it comes to domestic incidents, this league's position has long been see no evil. I'm going to say it one more time. I believe that the NFL's position has long been, when it comes to a domestic dispute that could lead to violence and had led to violence between one of its players and his wife or his fiance or his girlfriend, the league was like, that's between the man and his woman. We want to stay out of those kinds of disputes to a fault. And we're going to get to this a little later, but I love the statistic provided by Terry O'Neill, the president of NOW, National Organization for Women, in which she said that, and I'm sure she'd done some homework on this, in the past she knows of 50 incidents of domestic violence that came to charges that she thought that the NFL basically pushed under the carpet. I agreed with that. I've been saying that for a couple of days now because that's long been their stance. So is it a league-wide stance? Are there more decision makers involved than just Roger Goodell? Yes, there are. But in this case, Roger Goodell is the head of this league, of this company, of this organization. So he's going to have to pay the price either way, whether he saw the tape or whether he chose not to see the tape, if in fact he was made aware they did have in their possession at the league office a tape. And now let's talk about the bottom line, and I mean the literal bottom line. You know and I know, ultimately, push will come to shove with these sponsors that pay the bills of this league. And if those sponsors, the major sponsors that we will see during the telecast tonight, if they begin to get cold feet, that their customers are beginning to get turned off by the National Football League by seeing video after video replay of what happened inside the elevator, and then yesterday, and forgive me for even bringing this up because it's so disgusting to me, but yesterday we got to see the security, the full security tape. Remember, the TMZ tape was a cell phone video of the security tape. It was a little herky-jerky. We saw the extent, we saw the full-on onslaught, if you will, and we saw Ray Rice spit at Janae and then spit at her again, spit on her again, and again, if it's possible it could get any worse, because it's hard to believe it could get any worse, it just became even more despicable and disgusting with the latest video. So my point to you is, at some point, will these sponsors get cold feet because their customers are being turned off? I'm going to guess yes. And trust me, that will be the last straw, because somebody at the league office will have to pay, and obviously we have to go to the top position, the commissioner position.
Couple of things. I completely echo your sentiments on Ray Rice. When I saw him spit at her, you know what, I'm not trying to compare the two or anything, but in a lot of people's eyes, the spitting is just as, if not more disgusting than the hitting.
It is. It's right there.
You know, I leave that up to other people to debate. Secondly, I appreciate you bringing up Terry O'Neill, the president for the NOW, National Organization for Women, because obviously, you know, yesterday when we ended the show, you know, I was a bit demonstrative and theatrical to some degree in a lot of people's eyes. Let me make sure I make my point. I was addressing specifically her wanting Roger Goodell to be fired because of this one incident. assuming he never saw the tape. If you have a preponderance of evidence circulating, spanning years, where you can point to the inactivity, the lackadaisical approach, the dismissive mentality towards the issue of domestic violence, and that is her case against Roger Goodell, that is an entirely different argument. If the tape was indeed seen or tacitly ignored by Roger Goodell, and that could be proven, that is an entirely different subject. But if it's specifically about, oh, I just don't like the way he handled this particular situation, and Roger Goodell never saw the tape, then I disagree with her position. That's point number 2. Point number 3, when you look at what's transpiring right now, we understand the villain that Ray Rice has become. We understand that he deserves his comeuppance has arrived. It is well deserved. We get all of that, Skip. But where you and I disagree is that your mentality is that he didn't drop the ball, he never picked it up. And I'm saying to you, okay, you can make that argument. I don't know if myself nor anybody else can vehemently dispute that, because clearly the preponderance of evidence that seems to be leaking appears to be, at the very least, that you are the commissioner of a multi-billion-dollar establishment. Don't tell us you couldn't get your hands on the video. I never believed that. I always believed that Roger Goodell could get his hands on the video. Where you and I disagree is that I understand from a business perspective that as the commissioner of a multi-billion-dollar establishment, obligated to exhaust any and all options, at least it appears, to protect the brand. Yeah. And considering the issue of domestic violence, let me tell you something. Let me tell Terry O'Neill for the National Organization for Women, Roger Goodell is not the only person guilty in her, or should be the only person guilty in her eyes, of having, dare we say, a less than diligent approach to addressing the issue of domestic violence. Why is it that everybody is jumping on it now? You know why, Skip? Part of it is guilt, because we realize all of us should have paid more attention to this over the years. We're all guilty of not giving this issue the attention and the fervor and the focus it so richly deserves. So the National Organization for Women and everybody that shares their agenda is absolutely right in their quest to bring elevated attention to this issue, because we've all dropped the ball on it. The media has dropped the ball. The sports leagues have dropped the ball. The athletes, the executives, and owners have dropped the ball. We have the owner for the Baltimore Ravens on the record, essentially paraphrasing him, saying he dropped the ball. So if everybody is guilty of it, and that insidious behavior of neglect is something that can be attached to a bevy of entities throughout our nation, how do we single out Roger Goodell and say he's the one that should suffer for all of this, when all of us could be accused of being as guilty as he is?
That's a nice thought, but in the end, this man runs this league, this organization, and as I said, if somebody has to go down, it starts at the top, and it would start with him.
But the owner of the Baltimore Ravens, who is not only one of his bosses, but also was the guy who directly employed and cut checks for Ray Rice, said he dropped the ball. So, and their organization dropped the ball. So if we're going to say that about Roger Goodell, why can't we say that about Steve Biscotti? Why can't we say that about Ozzie Newsome? And I'm not saying that this should happen to them. Why can't we say that about John Harbaugh,
but it could
who was
happen
giving
to them.
Press conferences of support prior to the video coming out?
But
we might be heading
Stephen A.,
there.
it may come to that. We might be right. We may not saying it should, but it may come to that.
Right. But it may come to that. But what I'm saying to you is that we're calling for the commissioner when there are so many levels to touch on before we even get to commissioner as it pertains to negligence with this particular issue. That's all I'm saying. So everybody, to me, pointing the finger at Roger Goodell before we get to that other stuff, I find that a bit alarming, absent evidence that he had the video and he just ignored it.
Well, right now we're starting at the top, where it looks